his hand. I wasn't intending. I just wanted to get away. But then the big guy with a Luger, he came barreling through and knocked me down. And Johnny was saying, "No, Dick, no." He had his hands low. This guy was like a fire plug. He was short, but he was well built, and he could have blocked him out very easily, but he didn't. So he knocked me down to the ground, and then they regained the rifle and they marched us off to to see their superior in this town of St. Croix, France, which is just on the other side of the Rhine River. And they told this guy a story about how they'd been attacked by me and how they miraculously overcame my position. And I listened to this story. I thought, boy, am I really all that good? They didn't realize I could understand what they were saying. I thought, oh boy, this is good, you know. And then this German officer, pardon me, a Hauptmann, he was sitting in the sidecar of a motorcycle thing. He was a little tubby guy, and he was very fair-skinned. And the more he heard this story, his face kept getting redder and redder. And the next thing I know, he jumps up and he calls for 8 troops to compose a firing squad. And they march us over to this brick wall, and they all were lined up, 8 of them, to shoot us on this spot. And the square was actually in French territory, but a lot of German sympathizers. And the whole town just made a big circle to watch the execution. And people say, weren't you scared or concerned? I said, no. I've read and saw so many stories about the good guys always win. So I really wasn't concerned. Of course, I'm 19 years old. You don't frighten that easy. So the German came up to my bombardier and flipped his dog tags, and his name was Stadler, so I wasn't surprised. Stedler is the way they say it in English. But I wasn't surprised when I heard the German say, a good German name, can you speak German? Because Johnny said, I don't know what you say, I'm just a bombardier. And I thought to myself, oh, Johnny, don't say that. The people were screaming at us, murder of women and children, you know. I thought, that'll seal our fate. So then he turned to me. I always thought my name was French because Dad told me that. And so when he flipped it over, he said, oh, Matheis said a good Deutscher Name, meaning good German name. I thought, well, that's a surprise. I found out the background of that later. But at any rate, he further identified it as being a good town because he said that's the name of a suburb of a city where he came from. And so he asked me if I could speak German. I told him a little. And so we conversed for about 5 minutes. I noticed that his face was getting back to the normal color, so I thought, let's keep it going here. So he finally waved to, turned half around and waved to the riflemen to put the rifles down and march us off to a civilian prison. That was the end of our day.
So it's the end of the first day. Firing squad is
History.
sends you to a prison.
Yeah. Well, we were there just one day, and then one evening they put us on a train to go over to Freiburg, Germany, where they had a big civilian prison. So the 2 of us were shipped there. When we got there, the rest of our crew was there waiting for us. They got us all except for the pilot, co-pilot. They went north instead of south and sat out at the time they thought it might be. It was a smart move. I wish I was smart. But they waited, and then the next day they headed south. They somehow or another got into Switzerland, but they were thrown into a German sympathizer camp in Switzerland. And they sensed that they were going to be shipped back to Germany. So they escaped from there, back into Germany, over into France, over the Pyrenees into Spain, and returned to England. So they then did a tour of the country promoting, I think, Liberty bonds, and they were known as the Gold Dust Twins. I saw one of the big pamphlets or banners, you know, saying they were coming and all that stuff. So they had all the glory and we had all the grief. But we were there only about 2 days, and there was one incident that I remember very distinctly about it, and that is we had only one guy that smoked in the crowd. He was our crew chief. He was the old man of the crew. He was 35 years old, and he had taken a cigarette and put it into the lining of his sweater and had it in there and one safety match. And so we was sitting there, and he said he's dying for a smoke, so he thought the time had come. So he got them both out. We're watching this, and he put that in his mouth and struck a match. And I thought, I hope it burns for me. It burned all right, but they lit the end of it. But by virtue of it being there so long, the tobacco had loosened up and the cigarette burned out. And so, and his depression, it's amazing how much you're impressed by someone's momentary depression. But that was the highlight of the visit to the German prison. But when we were marched there, it was sort of an unreal thing. It was early in the morning, and Freiburg is a beautiful town. We were walking on cobblestones, and all in front of all the homes they had these beautiful planters with all kinds of flowers and all. Everything smelled so beautiful and fresh. You know, I thought, what a war this is. This is crazy, you know. And then when we saw the German officers, though, with their spit and polish boots and all that, I said, no, this is the real thing. So we were in prison for a couple of days. Then they put us on a train again, traveling only at night, and which was for our protection as much as anything else, because any train that was moved was fair game for the Allied fighters. But we were transferred up to Frankfurt, Germany, where they had this interrogation center. And I was there for a total of about 8 days. But we got there just in time to experience an air raid at the wrong end. That day, the 8th Air Force hit Frankfurt, and we were watching them go over, and one guy in our barracks said, we were in a temporary barracks with bunks, and he said, oh, one of our planes are going down. He said, no, that's a marker bomb, meaning that was the lead plane's signal for everybody to bomb. So we all ran underneath the beds. I don't know what we thought we could do, trying to get away from the blast. We could hear the thump, 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 but they were hitting a marshalling yard or railroad yard about 5 miles away. But fortunately, they were pretty accurate that day. But that was our introduction to that place. But then we were put into these small rooms of solitary confinement. You couldn't talk or anything to anybody. All we could do is wrap Morse code on the walls and exchange messages. And because of this funny thing that all you could really do was just a little cubicle of maybe 4 by 8 or something like that, just enough for a bed and a washstand. But it was all wallboard, and everybody, strange what you do, to kill time, almost all of us counted nail heads. And then you only have this little hatch opened up once a day, and they put in a bowl of ungodly soup to keep you alive, I guess. And then after 5 days like that, then they take you out for the interrogation. And of course, at that point, everybody wants to talk, and that was a smart move. But we were always told the name, rank, and serial number. That was standard procedure. So I got in there, and here's this guy. I've read a book about this guy. He was well known and very clever. But he was sitting there at a beautiful mahogany desk and spit and polish beyond belief. He actually was a professor at a university in his private life early. And he was sitting there. Then he had this beautiful female in the service come through with a platter full or tray full of beautiful odored food, you know, puts it down, and of course you're starving to death watching him eat. It was really rough treatment. So he started the questioning, and he said, I know all about that name, rank, and serial stuff. He said, let me tell you what we got here. He told me when I arrived in England, what squadron I was in, what group, where I went to college, what I majored in, and my mother's maiden name. He had it all in the file. He said, see, we don't really need to know much about you. I said, well, why have you got me here? He said, one thing I want to know is what shot you down, flak or a fighter? And I thought about that for a second. I said, neither one. And he said, what was it? He was a little surprised. I said, an ardent desire to see Germany in the summertime. He jumped up and he pointed up. He said, get out, get out, get out. Called for the guard, sent me off. I'm lucky I didn't get shot, but what I did get is 3 more days of solitary confinement. That was the end of that stop.
How stay there before you went to a Stalag Luft camp?
I was there for 8 days, 5 plus the 3 days as a bonus.
What was it like at Stalag Luft?
Well, we took a train ride, a horrible experience. Do you want to hear anything about that? Well, there was one incident on that that was particularly important, to me anyway. We were in an old beat-up passenger train, which was lucky. Most guys got there in boxcars. But one time we stopped, and I noticed for the first time that there was another car behind. No, there were 2 boxcars behind, and we stopped. The doors opened, and all these little kids poured out of there. And it was an old German guard that was guarding us. And I asked him in German, I said, what's that all about over there, all those little children? I said, why are they there and where are they going? He was a kind guy, and he started to cry. And so I turned away from him. I was embarrassed by what his experience was. But those kids were probably going to Poland to be exterminated, I guess, something of that nature. It was a horrible looking scene. But then we finally arrived at Stalag Luft 1. We didn't know where we were going. Just when we got there, we saw what it was. Pardon me. And we went in as a group from the rail station through the entrance. And then we were brought in for 3 purposes. One was to make sure they had the right file on the right person. Another was for giving you clothing that they wanted you to wear, or just the essentials, whatever it may be. And the third was to assign you to a barracks and a room. And so the first thing I did, I was interrogated by their intelligence officer. This is the story that Joyce liked so much. When I was a kid, and I told you about going over the airfields, Mom would also, when we go over that direction, every Saturday morning, she would see Henry the butcher in his butcher shop in Hempstead, Long Island. And so he got to know me as a little boy that went along with Mama Bear. And so, and when the war started, Hitler said, once a German, always a German, asked everybody to return to the fatherland. He was a part of the German Bund there on Long Island. We knew that. And he went back to Germany. So who was the intelligence officer? It was Henry the Butcher. And so he looked down at the record. I didn't know who it was initially. He had his head down. I don't know, I would have even known otherwise anyway. But he looked up, he said, Richard, how is your mother? So that's my introduction to Stalag Luft 1. But then we got the bedding is what it was mainly, and then assigned to a room. And there were 3 compounds, and each compound had maybe about 20 barracks, and each barracks had about 12 rooms in it. And before I left the States, I very candidly, I went AWOL at Camp Kilmer to go home and see my folks, and I did that successfully 2 nights. The third night I wasn't tempted for some reason. That was the night we shipped out, so I got away with it. But while I was home, Mother knew that a close friend of mine in high school lived right around the corner, had also gone in the Army Air Corps, but he was missing in action. She didn't want to tell me, for fear it would bother my morale, which it wouldn't have, but she was worried. Well, I got into this room after all those possibilities, and who's sitting on the edge of a bed right in that room but Dick Grant, my friend from home. So he got shot down, he's flying out of Italy, shot down over the Alps. But that's my introduction to the camp.
What was life in the camp?
Well, the camp was, it was run by the German Air Force, as most of those Luftwaffe camps, in fact, they all were. And that was different from, let's say, a camp run by the SS, who were cruel, no good son of a guns. But the Air Force still had that little spirit of World War I, where you shoot a guy down and salute him as he's dying or burning to death. But it wasn't all that way. You had to obey their orders. And they'd get us up every morning at 6 o'clock for a head count. And you better be out there. The, the environment was, well, you're in a room with all these double bunks all around the walls, pretty crowded, had a couple of lights in the center, barrel of bulbs hanging on the ceiling. The windows that were in there were all boarded up at night. You had one stove that was for heat as well as cooking. And that was pretty, more than a couple of long tables to eat. We used them to play cards. We played bridge every night, every day. We got to be pretty good bridge players. But it was anything to keep you busy. The guys are from all over the country. They're very interesting guys. We had a lot of camaraderie, but the food was scarce. We had any number of things we could do for activities, and which I had jumped in on all. There are things that were provided by the International YMCA as well as the Red Cross. Red Cross was mainly food parcels, which you'd hear from anybody that was a P.O.W. over there. And they were supposed to be one parcel per week per prisoner. Well, it was really that way. And when the Germans thought they were going to win the war, they just dried up entirely. But those parcels, though, were our salvation. We wouldn't have lived through the war without them. So, in fact, there was one incident about this one Jewish boy from Detroit. It was Sonny Schlossberg, and he was as funny as can be. He was a great guy, and he sent a message. We were able to mail messages to home in these little pieces of paper, and we could send one every 6 months. But it would take 6 months to get here. There, and he was so grateful to the Red Cross that he told his parents to take the next monthly check that he got paid while he was still in the service, and give it to the Red Cross. But he meant just one. They thought they meant all. They thought he meant all of them. So when he got this message back that the Red Cross was profoundly happy for what he had contributed, that already 12 months had passed. and I heard, we all had a mail call, everybody was getting mail and laughing and all that. I heard this cry of anguish from down the hall. It was Sonny crying about the lost income. He said it'd be another 6 months before he could tell them to stop. But at any rate, we had that. Then friends from home could ship food to you. Not all you'd like, but there were some things that did get through. So that was on the food end. And then we had a library provided by the YMCA, so I did a lot of reading of books. And then they also provided textbooks for certain college courses. And there was a class on electrical